Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 offensive players who I think are going to break out in the 2022 NFL season. And in my next video, I'm going to be breaking down 5 more defensive players who I think are going to break out. For the offensive players, I'm going to be highlighting 3 players from the AFC and 2 players from the NFC. And make sure you watch this video through. This was kind of a funny one. Always make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and then follow my TikTok in the description.
Zack Wilson is my first player that I think is going to break out. And the first reason is because his stats are lying to you. Yeah, he might have finished the year off with 11 interceptions and only 9 touchdowns, and he had the 30th best QBR. But if we look at his game logs, we can see that he got a lot better as the year went on. In a Week 7 matchup versus the Patriots, Zack Wilson was injured, having a strained PCL that sidelined him for 4 weeks. Before that injury, Zack Wilson had 9 interceptions and only 4 touchdowns. But after his injury, Zack Wilson had 9 touchdowns in total, 5 in the air and 4 on the ground, to only 2 interceptions. Another key factor is that Zack Wilson's best receiver from week 14 on was Braxton Berrios. Zack Wilson's supporting cast has also drastically improved. A weak spot on the Jets in 2021 was the tight end group, and the Jets went on and got C.J. Uzomah, who was in the Super Bowl, and Tyler Conklin, who had 600 yards last year. The Jets signed Pro Bowl Laken Tomlinson. The Jets also drafted Breece Hall and drafted Garrett Wilson. Not to mention Mekhi Becton, Corey Davis, and Elijah Moore all coming back from injury. The biggest thing Zack Wilson needs to improve on is his accuracy. His accuracy was one of his worst points last year, and if Zack Wilson can get a 65% completion percentage, which is league average, we could see some significant improvements from Zack Wilson. To use a basketball reference, we've seen the half-court shots that Zack Wilson can make, but we really need to see his layups go in. If Zack Wilson can do that, he can make the Jets a lot better and make them a really competitive team from here on out. Tua has all the possibilities to break out, but it really depends on his arm. Tua Tagovailoa had more turnover-worthy plays than big plays, and he also has a bottom-tier arm. And his arm is a problem, and we've known this for the past 2 years. Even though Tua can't air it out like most quarterbacks, he does have one trait that's really good. In the 2 years he's already played, he already has a really good completion percentage, and last year he had a 67.8, which is an above average completion percentage. The Dolphins went out and got Mike Mcdaniel, who is an offensive mastermind in San Francisco. One of the biggest reasons why Deebo Samuel was so good last year. Mike McDaniel will likely be better than his last coach with Tua, Brian Flores, who always wanted to ship him out or bench him. Another really big boost for Tua is that the Dolphins went out and had an excellent offseason. The Dolphins went out and traded for Tyreek Hill, which they gave a first and a second to the Chiefs for. The roster is also significantly better. They went out and got key additions like Tyreek Hill. They also got Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, Cedric Wilson, Raheem Mostert, and Chase Edmonds. This is a massive make-it-or-break-it year for Tua, and I think that he could actually be pretty good this year. Maybe his stats look like 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. All Tua needs to do is to keep it simple. Give the ball to your best players like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and let them play. They're really fast receivers, so they shouldn't have a problem getting away from defenders. All he has to do is complete his passes and just sit back and let them run wild. Okay. Yes, I agree with you. Javonte Williams is going to break out in 2022. But I have another Denver Bronco player that's going to break out. Not a lot of people know who Okwuegnabum is, but he's a tight end on the Denver Broncos, and he's actually the tight end 1 for the 2022 NFL season after the Denver Broncos traded Noah Fant for Russell Wilson. There's also an interesting article on Player Profile that I'm going to have the link in the description that discusses this topic. One unique thing about Okwuegnabum is that he's one of the fastest tight ends in the league. He ran a stellar 4.49 at his combine. His advanced statistics are really interesting. When you look at the tight ends around him, it would seem like Okwuegnabum is at minimum a league average to above league average tight end, but he only had 330 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. The most important stat up here is his 29.9 target rate in 2021 and his yards after catch, which was a 6.4 above Jonnu Smith, who's one of the fastest tight ends in the league, and who's also getting paid $50 million by the Patriots. If you haven't heard, the Broncos have a new quarterback, that and Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson is just above league average for tight end targets. Yeah, but he's super cringy though.
Broncos country, let's ride!
When we look at the target shares for tight ends, we can see that he targets them around 27 at the highest to 19 at the lowest for tight ends. Now, the target share number was a lot less. The route running percent of Jimmy Graham and Gerald Everett is going to be similar to Okwuegnabum, who is less of a traditional tight end and more of a slot tight end, similar to guys like Mike Gesicki and Kyle Pitts. I think that Albert Okwuegnabum can easily have a year where he has 500 yards and 6 touchdowns, especially because he doesn't have a lot of competition in his tight end room, and also there are only a few wide receivers that are going to get targets from Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and KJ Hamler. You should keep an eye on Albert Okwuegnabum for the 2022 NFL season.
Broncos country, let's ride.
Okay, moving on to the NFC players. We've been waiting like 2 years now for Tony Pollard to deservedly get more carries from Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott's been declining the past couple of years. I know in 2016 he was a complete monster and a dog, but is that dog still in him? Last year he averaged 5.5 yards a carry, which by the way is insane, and Zeke only averaged 4.2. If we look at this chart that I made, in 130 carries, he had 27 broken tackles compared to 19 in 237 carries by Zeke. Tony Pollard also had 3.6 yards after contact, meanwhile Zeke only had 2.7. And then Tony Pollard had a 10-yard run every 7.6 carries compared to 9.8 that Zeke had. If Tony Pollard had the exact same amount of carries that Zeke did, probably would have had 1,200 to 1,300 yards and been a way more valuable asset to the Cowboys. Now, I understand the Cowboys situation with Zeke. They have to give him the most carries purely based on his contract. But now that Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson are gone, I think that Tony Pollard should get a lot more attention out of the backfield and get more targets. Tony Pollard's also going to be an underrated fantasy player this year because I do think he's going to get more targets, and I think he should get more carries out of the backfield as well. The Cowboys really do have to decide how much they want to give Tony Pollard the ball, because after this year, he's a free agent, and it wouldn't shock me if he goes somewhere else and then immediately gets a 1,000-yard season with a full workload. Okay, the last player I'm going to do on this list is going to be an offensive lineman. Christian Darasaw is the Vikings left tackle. Christian Darasaw had a bit of a rough rookie year, but I wouldn't say he had the worst offensive tackle rookie year. Now, when I started making YouTube videos, one of my first videos was ranking the 2021 NFL draft class, and I had Christian Darasaw as my third ranked player. I was really high on the Virginia Tech prospect, and I thought he could have gone top 15 potentially, purely based on his run blocking alone, which he was excellent in 2020. Now, in pass protection, he was not. He allowed 5 sacks, which is not very good, but he's also a rookie tackle. His best ability was 100% in the run game, and if he continues to develop that, he could be one of the best run blocking tackles in the league. And I'm especially high on him now because the new Vikings coach, Kevin O'Connell, who is the offensive coordinator for the Rams, is going to have an air raid system or a similar system to the Rams. And we just saw another left tackle in Andrew Whitworth play at a pretty good level in that system. And I think that if Christian Darasaw is able to be developed more this year, he could be a really good left tackle for Kirk Cousins. I think one of the more important keys to this offense is that offensive line and how stable it can be. And if it is, I could see the Vikings potentially being in the wild card this year. And the left tackle Christian Darasaw is going to have to be a big part of that.
And that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know more players you think are going to break out. And also,
Let's ride.